Welcome back. Today we're going to explore a message that I think many people will care about. Don't follow a path just because everyone else is walking it, or because it has existed for a long time. There is a very strange kind of getting lost. It doesn't knock you down immediately. It doesn't create a big accident. It doesn't make the people around you panic. It simply makes you wake up every morning, do everything you're supposed to do, and quietly feel that something inside you is slowly wearing away. From the outside, everything still looks fine. You still have a job. Your paycheck still arrives. Your friends still think you're on the right path. Your family still feels reassured because you seem stable. But only you know. There are mornings when you sit still a few extra minutes before walking into a place that has become so familiar. Not because you're lazy, but because deep down, you no longer want to keep going the same way. Many people believe the tragedy of life is failure. I don't think so. There is a much quieter tragedy. It's when someone lives very correctly, yet is walking a path that was never truly theirs. I once knew someone like that. His name was Daniel, 36 years old. He lived in a city that wasn't too noisy, had a job good enough to earn other people's admiration, and an apartment tidy enough to make it look like everything in his life was in order. From the outside, there was nothing to complain about. But every morning, Daniel arrived at the company parking lot about 10 minutes before his shift started. He never rushed to step out of the car. He sat there, both hands resting on the steering wheel, looking at the glass doors of the building as if he were about to enter a place that felt strangely unfamiliar. Some days he turned on the air conditioning. Some days he turned everything off. Sometimes he just sat there quietly. No phone calls, no music, nothing at all. Just sitting. A very strange kind of silence. Like someone trying to gather himself before stepping into another day that no longer felt like his own. It's a kind of exhaustion that's difficult to explain. Because it's not like the fatigue you feel after an overloaded week of work. It feels more like you're using all your energy just to keep playing a role you've been playing for far too long. And the thing is, Daniel didn't hate his life. He didn't have a cruel boss. There was no dramatic crisis, no major breakdown that could easily be named. Everything was just fine. And that word, fine, is exactly what keeps so many people stuck the longest, because if a path were truly terrible, we would leave sooner. If a door hurt badly enough, we would find a way out. But a life that is not too bad can hold someone in place for years. It gives you just enough safety to stay, just enough logic to convince yourself, just enough approval that you feel guilty for wanting to change direction. That is the most subtle trap of the familiar path. It doesn't knock you down. It lulls you to sleep. And perhaps this doesn't happen only to Daniel. It happens to many people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. People who follow every step correctly. Study what they're supposed to study. Choose the job they're supposed to choose. Love the person they're supposed to love. Live a schedule that looks very good on paper. Yet in quiet moments alone, they no longer feel themselves inside that life. I think the most dangerous part of following a conventional path is not the path itself. It's that the path is often praised by many people as the right one. From childhood, we are taught how to recognize a good life, study hard, choose a stable career. Don't be too different. Don't try anything too risky. Don't make your parents worry. Don't let others see you going off track. These words aren't necessarily bad. Many of them come from love, from the fear of seeing someone you care about struggle, from the wish that their life might be safer than yours once was. But the problem is this: advice born from fear usually helps us avoid risk, not reach meaning. Some people never live badly. They just never truly live. That's a very big difference. And it arrives so quietly that many people only notice it when their body begins to speak for them. You become more easily irritated, harder to concentrate. Small joys no longer feel joyful the way they once did. Weekends stop feeling like recovery and instead become time to numb yourself before returning again. You start calling emptiness maturity. You call numbness stability. You call losing yourself accepting reality. But deep down, the body is very honest. It always knows when you are living against what you truly need. A sad truth is that many people simply learn to tolerate it better. They find a few time management tricks. Add a few extra cups of coffee. Take a short vacation. Watch a little motivational content on weekends. Then return to the same path. Not because they are weak, but because they were never taught that they have the right to question the path they're walking. That's something worth pausing on. Many people grow up becoming better at enduring than at listening to themselves. We are taught how to adapt, how to push harder, how not to give up. But very few people teach us that sometimes continuing is the dangerous choice. Sometimes loyalty to an old path is not strength. It is simply fear, dressed in a more respectable name. Daniel lived that way for quite a long time. He still did his job well, still polite, still responsible, still went out with friends on weekends. Sometimes he even posted pictures that made others think he was enjoying life. But one evening, after a very ordinary day, he came home, placed his keys on the table, sat down on the couch, and didn't turn on the lights. The room was dark. His phone lit up a few times, then went silent again. He sat there for a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't collapse like in the movies. It was simply the first time in many years that he no longer had the strength to tell himself that everything would be fine if he just tried a little harder. There are moments like that in life. Very quiet, very little noise. But they are the moments when a person begins to become honest with themselves. Daniel later said that night he thought only one sentence: "If I continue like this for 5 more years, who will I become?" Sometimes life doesn't change because we find a big answer. It changes because we finally dare to ask a question we can no longer avoid. That question doesn't solve everything immediately. It doesn't pay your bills. It doesn't erase fear. It doesn't make people instantly understand you. But it does something very important. It wakes you up from autopilot. And once you're awake, you can never go back to sleeping the same way again. That's when another uncomfortable truth becomes clear. Many things we call our personal choices are actually scripts we have repeated for so long that they feel like our own. We choose careers because others choose them. We define success by what is easiest to praise. We stay in relationships that no longer nourish us simply because we've stayed for so long. We continue a lifestyle that drains us because everyone says it's the price of adulthood. But not every price is worth paying. And not every exhaustion is a sign you are on the right path. Sometimes tired is simply tired. Sometimes it's a part of you asking to live differently. There is a very common psychological trap that few people speak about clearly. Once we've invested too much time, effort, youth, reputation, degrees, or relationships into a certain path, we become afraid to leave it. Not because it is still good, but because we fear everything we invested before would become meaningless. So we continue. Not out of hope, but out of inertia. That's how many people trade another 5 years, 10 years, just to avoid facing the possibility that they were wrong before. But what is the truth? A mistake does not become right simply because you extend it long enough. A path does not become meaningful simply because you have suffered for it for years. Some things only lead you further astray the longer you walk them, and true maturity is not always about holding everything together. Sometimes maturity is the calm ability to say, "This path once fit my life, but it no longer does." I like the way Daniel changed. Quietly. No grand announcement. No dramatic declaration about living his truth. He just started very small. Every evening, instead of working until exhaustion again, he spent 1 hour learning something he had once wanted to learn, but always thought was unrealistic. He began declining a few social invitations he used to accept just to maintain a pleasant image. He walked more, sat quietly more often, wrote down the things that made him feel alive, not the things that made him admired, but the things that felt true. That's where the difference lies. Many people build their lives on things that make them look okay in the eyes of others. Very few build them on things that make their soul feel less empty. And strangely, the right changes rarely come with applause. They arrive with silence. You need less immediate understanding, less agreement, less proof. You simply want to live in a way that when you wake up tomorrow morning, you no longer have to force yourself to continue. That isn't selfish, it's honest. Of course, finding your own path is not always beautiful. It has its price. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, moments when you feel slower than others, moments when you look around and wonder whether you're destroying a life that was already good enough. But there will also be very small, very real moments that let you know you are moving closer to the right direction. A morning when your chest feels lighter. A conversation where you don't have to perform. A work day that makes you tired, but not empty. An evening when you no longer feel like a stranger passing through your own life. These things are not glamorous, but they save people in very quiet ways. And perhaps that is what many people truly need. Not more slogans about bravery, not more pressure to break through, but the permission to pause and honestly ask themselves, does this path still belong to me? Modern life carries a strange paradox. We have more choices than ever before, yet it has never been easier to live according to a template. Everything today is easy to compare. Someone buys a house at 30. Someone gets promoted at 32. Someone marries the right person, travels to the right places, speaks the language of success society likes to hear. And among all those images, people easily forget their own rhythm. We stop asking what fits us. We start asking what prevents us from falling behind. That is a very dangerous question, because when we live only to avoid falling behind, we will accept any road, as long as many people are on it. But a crowded road does not mean the direction is right. Some paths look civilized, safe, even admirable from the outside, yet they lead people further away from the deepest part of themselves. And some paths look slower, simpler, less admired, yet they are the place where a person finally begins to breathe. If there is one thing I hope someone remembers after all this, it is simply this: don't continue a life just because you've become used to it. Don't stay loyal to a familiar path just because many others are walking it. Don't confuse familiarity with correctness. And above all, don't wait until you are completely exhausted before allowing yourself to ask the question. Many people don't need to be saved by a big miracle. They just need a quiet moment long enough to hear their true voice inside. Daniel did not transform into a completely different person. He was still himself. The only difference was that he stopped living like the caretaker of a life arranged to please everyone else. He began living like someone responsible for the truth of his own life. I think that is one of the most mature forms of freedom. Quiet, unshowy. Simply that every step afterward, even if slower, feels more real. And sometimes that is enough to save an entire life from passing silently by. If you are in a phase where everything looks fine from the outside, but inside you no longer feel at peace, don't rush to blame yourself for being weak. Maybe it's not that you've become worse. Maybe it's the honest part of you finally beginning to speak. Listen to it, calmly, kindly. Because the greatest tragedy is not walking the wrong path. The greatest tragedy is spending your whole life on a road that was never truly yours. Thank you for taking the time to listen and for allowing me to be with you for the past few minutes. Have a good rest. Tomorrow is a new day. Wishing you peace and happiness.